Today I'm going to be talking about Radiohead and their 2003 album Hail to the Thief, and why, even though it's not their best album, and while it is a little bloated, it's still worth listening to, I think. Are you such a dreamer? The band had just come off of releasing both Kid A and Amnesiac, and I think after that point they were just kind of lost, maybe a little fried, if you know what I mean. They didn't really know what direction to go in. They didn't have that sort of internal compass, I guess. Thankfully, at this point in time, it was, the early 2000s, so there was a lot going on in the world. Post 9/11 global tension, the Iraq war with George Bush and all. It was a pretty scary time, I guess, politically. And as this was going on, Thom Yorke, the vocalist, had also just had his first child. So I guess that kind of caused him to look outward into the world that this kid would be growing up in. And because of all of this, Hail to the Thief is very much a politically driven album. They took a step back from the electronic experimentation on Kid A and returned to a more traditional rock sound on the album. This is an interesting album for Radiohead, style-wise in my opinion, because I see it as kind of like a fusion of everything they've done before. It has the melancholic guitars of the Bends, the alienation of OK Computer, the glitchy stuff from Kid A, and the haunting vibes, I guess, from Amnesiac. It's kind of this amalgamation of everything they've done, but because of that, it kind of lacks its own distinct style. Radiohead is kind of known as the gloomy rock band. Hail to the Thief is just a gloomy rock album, I guess. You could say the same thing about the Bends and OK Computer, but I don't think Hail to the Thief reaches that level of quality. Or at least, it doesn't have the same highs as those albums did. Don't get me wrong, it's still great, it just lacks its own identity. Not to mention that it's the longest Radiohead album, at about an hour with 14 tracks, and the quality really varies between those tracks. As I mentioned before, this is definitely a very political album. The name of the album is a play on the US presidential anthem, Hail to the Chief, I think. And the name of the first song, 2 + 2 = 5, comes straight from George Orwell's 1984. There are lyrics like, "Don't question my authority or put me in a box." And Thom often talks about how he feels like this is the end of the world. Very original for Radiohead. Not like they've done that 5 times already. Like in the song The Gloaming, where he says that the alarm bells of those in charge should be ringing. Even when he's talking about his new child, he brings politics into it with lines like, "Maybe you'll be president, but know right from wrong," on Sail to the Moon. The closer, A Wolf at the Door, is like a capitalist horror story, but more on that later. The theme of struggling to connect with others has always been a central theme to Radiohead's work. But here, rather than connecting with people, they're talking about not being able to connect with the system. As for the best songs, I'd say one of them is 2 + 2 = 5. It takes a second to get started, but once the catchy guitar kicks in, you know the song's gonna be good. And the opening line, "Are you such a dreamer?" always gives me chills. I already mentioned how the name of the song comes from 1984, which is obviously a really upfront way of saying, yes, this is going to be political. Although I do wish the song was a bit longer, especially the last minute or so with the constant repetition of "but I'm not" and "maybe not," which I think is really cool. Another of the best songs I'd say is There There. Starts with like a hypnotic tribal drum groove, and then builds and builds until the end where both Thom's voice and the guitars are wailing to high heaven. It's got so much tension, and the line "we are accidents waiting to happen" has always been one that stuck out to me. Another of the best songs, and definitely my personal favourite, is Mixomatosis. The bass synth that starts the song just sounds really nasty, And the same thing goes for all the other synths that come in and out throughout the song. The whole thing is just super groovy, and Tom sounds like he's really reluctant to sing, like he's pissed off with us for some reason. The name comes from a disease that only affects rabbits. I'm not going to show any pictures of it because it's pretty nasty looking, but it causes them to get these weird swellings and growths before it kills them in just under 2 weeks. I'm not entirely sure of the symbolism being used here. Like, I don't understand why they picked the name myxomatosis. Maybe I'm just missing something. If I am, comment it below, because I'd love to know, because as I said, this is my favorite song on the album. Finally, the closer, A Wolf at the Door, is another of the best songs. I mentioned it a little already, but I'm gonna get deeper into it here. The saying, keep the wolf from the door, means to have just enough money to not starve. So, seeing as in the title of the song, the wolf is at the door, the protagonist of the song can no longer support themselves, or at least they're no longer in control of their own life. I think the protagonist on this is meant to be like a working class man, and the wolf is the issues that every capitalist system has. It's an interesting one for sure, and a good way to close the album, I think. As for the worst songs, I'd say that We Suck Young Blood is one of them. I really wish this one was one of the best, because it sounds like a gothic funeral and Tom sings like a vampire, enjoying the slow death of their next victim. Likely something about the capitalist system draining the passion of the youth and turning them into drone-like workers. The piano is slow and ominous, and the bit where it gets really fast for like 20 seconds in the middle is great, but the song just has so much empty space where nothing's really happening. It's also like 5 minutes long, so that doesn't help. And like, I just know that they can do better. This song feels a little half-assed. It's a cool concept that doesn't get executed super well. Say another one of the worst is The Gloaming, which immediately follows We Suck Young Blood, so bit of a shit run there in the middle. So this kind of sounds like a song from the Kid A Amnesiac sessions, but it's just a bit of a leftover and now it's here. Don't get me wrong, I think the way the synths warble, I guess, and they move in like little tip taps, I really like that. I think it's cool. I think the atmosphere is super interesting, but it never really goes anywhere. Same issue with We Suck Young Blood. Not to mention, there are other very electronic tracks on the album that are already better, like Backdrifts, and this album is also bloated for runtime, so I'm not sure why this is here. As for the album cover, once again designed by Stanley Donwood and Tom York. I think it's meant to be a sort of abstract dystopian city where everything is covered by billboards advertising products. Think of like Night City from Cyberpunk 2077. The advertisements here have just devolved into bright colors and single evocative words like fear, favorite, or 25 cents. So in that sense, it doesn't remind me as much of Cyberpunk as it does of the game Cruelty Squad. If you've ever seen the ads in that game, I'll throw it up on screen now. Yes, this is actually what the game looks like. Yes, I promise it's really good. Just, you have to trust me on that. So overall, Hail to the Thief is far from being perfect. It doesn't bring a whole lot of new ideas to the table either. It doesn't hit the same high highs as consistently as their other albums do. So it's still great, but it could be better. Overall, I'm gonna give this one 8.2 wolves at the door, because I know the band can do better than this, and they will do better than this, because after this, they would go on to make an album that, despite how much great stuff they'd already done before, this one might actually be their best. It also just happens to be one of my favorite albums, and commonly regarded as one of the best albums of all time, and that's In Rainbows. But that review's next week, so subscribe so you don't miss it. Well, hopefully the video for In Rainbows will be out next week, although I wouldn't be surprised if I have to push it back a bit because it is going to be quite long. So yeah, it might actually not be next week. It might be the week after. We'll see how it goes. And I'll see you then. Bye.